Time is now 6:32 p.m., Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. I'm calling to order the meeting of the Warwick School Committee. At this time, I ask all those willing and able to please rise as we do the Pledge of Allegiance. This time I'll turn it over to Ms. Tedeschi for a roll call vote on attendance.
Chair Galligan.
Present.
Vice Chair Hazelwood,
Here.
Michelle Kirby-Chapman,
Here.
Karen Backus,
Present.
David Testa.
Here.
There's a quorum present. We have one item of business before this body tonight. Discussion update, construction in new high schools, as presented by Chris Spiegel from left field. Prior to turn it over to Mr. Spiegel in the presentation, I would like to have the Superintendent of Warwick Public Schools, Superintendent Lynn Danbrook, make a few remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Test, test.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to attend this school committee meeting, very important meeting. I'd like to remind or tell everyone, I'm very passionate about the two new high schools, and from the very beginning of the process, I have emphasized that this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, not only for our community, but especially for our students. We have the chance to build two new state-of-the-art high schools that will not only meet but exceed the needs of 21st century learners. These schools will provide cutting-edge academic environments, advanced technology integration, and top-tier athletic fields and facilities, programs ensuring our students are fully prepared for the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Superintendent. I'd also like to recognize a few local delegates that we have in attendance this evening. Councilman from Ward 5, Ed Lattiser, thank you for attending. Councilman from Ward 9, Vinnie Gebhardt. Councilman from Ward 8, Anthony Sinapi, and I hope I didn't miss anyone as they were funneling in. So I appreciate the locally elected officials attending this evening's event. At this time, to my colleagues and to members of the administration, we can make our way down to the front for the presentation from left field.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Spiegel. I'm a project executive with Left Field Project Management. We have been working with the district since February of this year on the two high school projects. We have a brief presentation for you tonight to discuss project activities. Since our last update, as many of you are aware, we came before the school committee at the end of August to present where the current designs were. Everything that you're going to see tonight is reflective of those current designs. So I want to be very clear about that. The design that was showed to the community at that early August meeting is still the design that we're working with. So all of the numbers and everything else that you're going to see tonight is with that presentation. So we received generally very good feedback on that presentation in terms of the design of the two schools. A lot of support, I think, moving forward for that design. But having said that, I do want to get into the nuts and bolts of the presentation. I know it's late. First, I'd like to talk about project activities. There we go. So just to recap for those that maybe haven't been following along, and I apologize, it looks like the formatting got lost in translation a little bit, but stage one, the submission was approved by RIDE. That was in September of 2021. In stage two, we submitted, or not me, but the district submitted a stage two submission, and that was approved by RIDE in February of 2022. A voter referendum for $350 million was passed by the voters in November of 2022. And then, of course, the release of the project funds in September of 2023. Since Left Field came on board officially on March 14th, 2024, we have continued to bring on the necessary project partners as required by the various authorities having jurisdiction over these projects. That includes the Rhode Island Department of Education, the Rhode Island Department of Education School Building Authority, Department of Environmental Management, and of course any federal, local, or state organizations that have sway over the constructions of schools in Rhode Island. As you can see, we brought on a number of additional consultants and went through a number of exercises, including bringing on our construction manager, bringing on our commissioning agent, bringing on our environmental engineer. We've also already completed early enabling work at Drumrock. We brought on our hazmat consultant, and then we issued our schematic design documents to RIDE. So that was in 2 different separations in October of 2024, and that's an important date, and we'll get to that in a second. And for Pilgrim, we issued those in August 27th. We have already received back our approval from the Rhode Island Department of Education for our Stage 3 schematic design submittal. For those that aren't aware, Stage 3 of the RIDE process is a set of 3 gates that we must actually go through in order for the project to qualify for reimbursement from the state of Rhode Island. The state of Rhode Island is going to pay for 50% of these projects, at least 50% of these projects, if we go through the RIDE process. So if we continue to follow their RIDE process, we would be eligible for reimbursement. So having said that, the first of those gates is schematic design. The second is design development. The third is construction documentation. As you can see here, we have recently wrapped up with schematic design for these projects. Now, what is schematic design? Schematic design is an educational programming and pricing exercise where we determine all of the required educational components of a new school. That includes fields, gyms, lighting. It includes classroom spaces, CTE spaces, workstations, all of the individual elements that make up a new high school, and we determine a path forward in terms of a design that gets all of those elements within one functional working school. Schematic design is not the end of the design process, as I mentioned. As we move forward through schematic design into design development and eventually into construction documentation, the design gets further refined. We begin to eliminate assumptions that we are making in terms of the costs of the project. And by the end of construction documentation, I've said this before, it will be an inevitability that the project will change from CDs, construction documentation, from what it was in schematic design. That is the nature of this process that we're going through. And it is just that. It is an iterative process where we continually take a look at what the program design is, and we adjust and pivot based on the budget, the schedule, and the availability of the workforce out there. So, having said that, I'd like to touch quickly on some market conditions that this project, and I'm sure all of you are aware, every other project is going through right now. I won't dawdle on these statistics. I think if you're like me, I have a family, we all know that our grocery bills have gone up substantially, but if we look at this information on the left, this is provided by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is a producer price index that's put forward by the federal government. Left Field does not create this data. Left Field has just pulled this data from their website. As you can see from the period of 2006 to 2017, the construction cost index specifically for new school building construction, it took 11 years to increase 50 index points. From 2021 to 2023, which is the same timeline as this project, September 2021, approved by RIDE, voter referendum, the project funds released in 2023, the construction cost index increased by 50 index points. Now, why is that important? It represents a moving target that we've been trying to adapt to throughout the entire, over the course of this project. In September, so I'm not going to delay this. I think if you're like me, you understand that prices of everything have increased. And I don't want to get into the weeds on this. More specifically, I'd like to talk about, in our region, what we're seeing for school construction pricing. So as you can see here, these are market conditions for comparable projects. This data is put out by the individual states. This is not data, again, that Left Field put together. As you can see, the average cost, and I apologize again for the formatting here, but if you can see the end of 2021, the average was $506 a square foot. End of 2022, it was $600. End of 2023, it was $646. And it's estimated that in 2025, it'll be $816 a square foot. Those for those projects bidding at the end. If we take a look at recent Rhode Island project data, these are high school projects within the last 4 years. You have a low of 702, a high of 785, with an average of 729. And if we include all schools that have been worked on in the last 8 years, you're looking at a low of 637, a high of 847, and an average of 742.
Please use your microphone.
Oh, I apologize. So again, 702, 785, 729, with an average of 648. And again, Rhode Island projects within the last 8 years, all schools combined, you're looking at 637, 847, with an average of 742.
Excuse me, sir. Is that for building costs only, or does that include any site demolition?
Sorry, there's no Q&A at this moment in time. It's a presentation. He's presenting at this time. We have public comment coming up at the end.
So let's get to the main crux of the argument here. Where are we currently with our project? Excuse me. Again, the formatting got a little messed up here. If we could condense the screen so everyone can see the totals. Can you scroll down as I talk? Can you scroll down as I talk? Okay. The original budget for this work is $280 million. The CTC budget was $4 million. Our soft costs were $49 million. And our owner's contingency, which you can't see right now, is $17 million. Our owner's contingency is unallocated cash that we have in reserve on this project to account for any unforeseen conditions. These would include things like unsuitable soils. They would include ledge. These are the types of items that we hold an owner's contingency for. It's important to note that your owner's contingency is the largest at this stage of the project. We are in schematic design. There are still many unknowns about this project, and there are also many assumptions about this project. As we move forward through this process, those assumptions and those conditions will be further determined. But as of right now, we believe it is best practice to hold $17 million of owner's contingency, again, unallocated cash, onto the project in order to make sure that we are covering this project from any anticipated overruns in the future. If we look at the current cost estimate, this is the current cost estimate. Again, this is of schematic design. You're looking at $317.1 million. The CTC building renovation has come in at $4.7 million. Soft costs remain the same at $49 million, and the total and the owner's contingency remains the same. So this is important. I'm going to say this multiple times because you can't see it. The total construction costs, including soft costs for this project and owner's contingency, were budgeted at $350 million. Today, with all of the assumptions and with all of the schematic design where we currently are in the process, we're looking at a $387.8 million project. So again, the budget is $350 million. Where we currently are in this process at schematic design, we are looking at a $387.8 million project. As I mentioned, as we continue to move through this process and the designs get further developed, these numbers will harden. However, that being said, we felt it was appropriate and prudent to bring this to the attention of the owner, because if conversations are going to take place about potential scope realignment or funding discussions, those conversations take substantial time. Those aren't decisions that just can be made overnight. A lot of stakeholders have input into those conversations. This was the time that we felt appropriate to bring it forward to make sure that everyone knew the worst case scenario of where we currently are at 387. I have confirmed with our construction manager that 387 is that scenario. So, what is the cost estimating process? So, originally, we assisted Warwick Public Schools with hiring Dimeo Construction Management, and Dimeo and the architect's estimator reconciled an early schematic design cost at $777 a square foot and $837 a square foot. Now, in general, you're going to see higher cost per square foot for toll gate, Anybody has been to the toll gate site knows that there's a lot of ledge on that site. There's a significant grade change or drop off from one side of the site to the other. All of those represent significant construction hurdles that we must deal with. It drives the soft cost up. It drives the hard cost up for that. So at that original estimate, at 837, we came back, we spent months looking at ways where we could alter the construction of the building, so the constructability of the building, in order to bring that project down. And I have some examples of how we did that in just a few seconds, but you'll see that within that time period, Pilgrim High School dropped to $744 a square foot, and toll gate again, is higher, dropped at $792. Just recently, Demio and the architect, we did a second round of schematic design cost estimating. And why did we do that? Because we had changed the footprint of the building through these value management conversations. We had changed the construction of the building. It was important for us to have a new number to reconcile to make sure that our process was moving forward. We were heading in the right direction. So this additional round of value management and cost estimating, and I want to be clear, this process still isn't 100% wrapped up yet. We're looking at a new cost per square foot of Pilgrim at $718 and Tollgate of $770 a square foot. Again, our project budget is roughly around $650 a square foot if we're going off the original $350 million that was established in the stage 2. So we're trending in the right direction, but we still have work to go. And as we continue to develop these drawings throughout this process, we will continue to look for ways that we can add value to this project. With that being said, again, we did not want to wait until later to have this conversation because it could put the district in a position where now they have to have rushed conversations about the scope realignment and funding, but more importantly, that delays to this project cost money. We need to be clear that you saw that intense rise in school construction costs. For every month that this project gets delayed, there are substantial real costs associated with that. So our goal is to keep this project moving for a March of 2025 construction date. If we don't do that, the conversations become even more difficult. For those of you that know me or have been to school committee meetings before where I presented, I have been saying that difficult conversations are coming. Today is the first of those difficult conversations that we'd like to have with the school committee. Next slide. So here's an example of a change since the August update, specifically for Tollgate. As you can see, the design has been completely redesigned to save money. Gone is the courtyard. Gone are these heavy angles in the building. Gone is this. Gone are these structures right here that aren't allowed. We can't build on top of. So as you can see here, we have completely redesigned the Tollgate School to bring the project closer to budget. Now, we have not cut, and this is important, and I'll say it multiple times, to date, we have not cut 1 ounce of educational program from the stage 2. Not 1 ounce of educational program has been cut so far. The only difference between the stage 2, and we can get into that later, is I'll show the slide in a few minutes. But in terms of the redesign plan, as you can see, it has become more efficient. Our square foot cost has gone down. And we're doing this, again, to provide the same additional programming with educational programming without compromising any building materials and moving the project forward as best we can to bring it on as close to budget as we can. So this is one example. Show a separate example. And something else that's happened since the August update. You can see now the CTC renovation drawings have been advanced to schematic design. They were not advanced fully to schematic design at our last meeting. I know this is difficult to see, but again, it's how can we take a look at the required educational programming, work with the architects to put it into the most efficient space possible and save the most amount of money possible as we continue to work through the program. I've been asked, one more slide, excuse me, some of these got out of order it looks like. So here's another example of some cost saving strategies implemented. You see the original SD plan for the Pilgrim School. You see the value management plan. We have been able to remove 40,000 square feet, reduce the corridor width, and this has been done by reducing corridor widths, improving overall efficiency, cost-conscious exterior and interior material selections. It represents over $30 million in cost savings to date. And note, to date, we've identified approximately 200 items, and none of these items affect educational programming. So what's another example of what these look like? So here's a detail of the exterior at Pilgrim School. This is the original detail. This is the revised detail. And to the average person, it should look a lot simpler, and that's because it is. Because simpler designs are much easier and much more cost-effective to build. So this is an example of how the teams, all working together, took a design and reduced its cost without sacrificing its educational program. So again, these are examples of the work that's gone on. So going back, and I promised that things, we were asked to provide, we did want to provide several slides, I should say, with looking at renovation costs as well, because renovation costs are expensive as well. So we reached out to our construction manager as well as other construction managers that work in Rhode Island, and we pulled historical data for renovation costs over the last 2 years for new school buildings in Rhode Island. You can see that escalated, minimum of 18 months of redesign and bidding with potential start date in late 2026. You're looking at a cost per square foot of roughly about $712. This is for a heavy renovation. This means new windows. This means new roofing systems. This means fixing masonry outside the school. This means gutting the school and replacing all of the floors and any hazardous materials, changing around building walls. It is not a light touch renovation. It is a heavy renovation, and I believe most people would say that a heavy renovation is what's needed. If we look at those construction costs for renovation costs at 152, 139, and 5, you're looking at 297. It is important to note these following two things. A renovation would most likely cause us to forfeit bonus point reimbursements with the state of Rhode Island. We have the potential to lose 20% of reimbursement costs. That's 20% of every dollar spent. And also, this pricing does not include any site work. These are for interior renovations only. Significant site work, we believe, is within as what the people want in terms of their fields and other items like that. So we also want to put that caveat. This pricing does not include any site work. Another thing that we did want to touch on is we understood that one school option was looked at prior to Left Field coming on board during the stage 1 and stage 2 process, explored in 2018-19 with groups of community members and various stakeholders. Some prominent issues that were raised include, but not limited to, a lack of availability of a land parcel to accommodate one large school. You're looking at approximately 50 to 60 acres to accommodate one large school, parking, fields that would be required. Traffic issues due to increased volume of students and staff and teachers. Long distance travel distances for some students. Site constraints on the existing sites, which means it would be very, very, very difficult and costly for us to build one large school at either Pilgrim or Tollgate. And then finally, the size of buildings and FAA regulations. I think everybody knows we're on a flight path here. The Federal Aviation Administration has very specific rules and regulations about the size of buildings when you're near airports. That is a significant project constraint that we would have to adapt to build one school. This is to not say that it can't be done. This is to say that these were the issues that were identified in 2018 and 2019 as being significant obstacles in the path of a one school option. I know I've covered a lot of information in a very quick period. I've done my best to move through it as I know it's late and people have dinner to get back to. With that, I want to thank the committee for allowing me to give this presentation, and we look forward to continuing this process as we move forward, continuing to drive the cost of this project down and provide the most value possible. Of course. Oh man, come on, dude, come on. I know. I'm Chris, by the way. It's nice to meet you. My hand's a little sweaty. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Spiegel. I do want to also recognize in attendance this evening, we had a couple other elected officials walk in. We have Senator McKinney in the back, and we also have Councilman from Ward 2, Councilman Ricks, Councilman from Ward 4, Mr. McElroy, good Irishman. Thanks for coming out this evening. I appreciate you. Chris, thank you for that presentation. Before I turn it over to my colleagues, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to go first. So I would like to thank Left Field, Demio, and the administration for their time this evening. I appreciated the update, and I'm very thankful that they are here informing my constituents and all the taxpayers for that matter. In August, we had an update, and at the end of that meeting, I committed to our community that these updates would be more routine, and they would continue on throughout the construction process. I committed that evening that our next update would be in October. So I'm happy that we as a school committee and in collaboration with the administration have delivered on our promise. And these updates will continue to occur throughout the construction process. Talk of building new high schools began in 2017. A good friend of mine took over as head coach of the Pilgrim football team and asked me if I would be the PA guy for that football team. And I remember sitting in the press box, and I would flip the microphone on, and I would get shocked because of electrical shortage. I would also be accompanied during those games by squirrels and rats, and I sat on a water dampened floor. It was very soft. And at the end of that year, the press box, many of you in this community may remember, was condemned. And then the following year, so was our bleachers and several other bleachers throughout the community. And I said, why can't we just contact people within our community and replace them? And it was at that moment when it was stated, they're talking about building new high schools. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I was ecstatic. Preparations for this project and the Phase 1 application then began in 2021. Voter referendum, 2022. Bond released, 2023. Buildings designed in 2024. And planned construction in March of 2025. It's been a long road to get to this point. And as we have seen with the market data shared by Mr. Spiegel, a lot has changed. Historical inflation over a 2-year period that was seen over an 11-year period. In 2017, when the construction of new high schools was making its way throughout the community, my oldest child at that time was 1 year old. 1 year old. And he's now 8. And could potentially, depending on how this committee reacts and the community as a whole, may not enter new facilities at the age of 13 or 14 because the notion out there is you should just give up. Go back to the drawing board. Let's build one school. Though we've seen the challenges we would face if we go back and build one school. I've been contacted a lot and told about what we should have done, what would have been right. During the consolidations, we should have turned vets into the high school. That's good. You're probably right. Someone who gets a bad rap in the community, Mr. Cody, he was preaching years ago. Should have built new schools, right? But today we can't live in the world of should-haves. We've got to live in the world of what is before us and how do we address the issue at hand. The notion that we should just give up is unfathomable. As a community, if that's our strategy, we should all just share an embarrassment. But I, for one, will not let that happen. We have an issue before us. Difficult decisions need to be made. And as a community, we need to rally together. We must solve our problem. And I'm working closely with our OPM, Left Field, our administration, our chair of our building committee, Mr. Testa, my colleagues on this committee, Ms. Backus, Ms. Kirby-Chapman, Ms. Hazelwood, our superintendent and assistant superintendent, to ensure addressing this problem is the case. It's important tonight that though you received what you might consider unfavorable information, know that it's just an update and you heard we're on a journey. It's a process. So as a community, though the information may not have been something that we wanted to take in this evening, you probably wanted to hear we're on time, on budget, on track, or we're going to come in under budget. Given that that was not the case, I ask that you all continue to please remain positive and supportive of this project. After all, it's an investment. We're investing into an entity that is expected to provide taxpayers, myself and yourself included, my parents that are moving towards retirement, my aunts and uncles that are already retired in this city, and many others. They're looking for returns on their investment. They're investing and they're looking for a return. And that entity that they're investing into is the Warwick Public Schools Department. The most important return on investment is the education of our youth. Second to that is preparing the next generation to contribute to our community. Tonight I sit before you as a product of the prior generation's investments, graduating from this great academic institution, known as the greatest high school in Warwick, Pilgrim High School. Just kidding, Miss Necco. I know there's another school on the south side of the city, and Miss Hazelwood, there was vets. But I was educated by tremendous teachers and administrators, yes, all of whom are constantly ridiculed in the community by non-educators based on their salaries and baseless examinations administered by RIDE, an entity who, in my opinion, these days is underperforming. But I'll reserve those comments for a later time. The final return on investment, which our taxpayers are looking for relative to these schools, is to create a district which retains its students, to reduce out-of-district costs, and a city which people will gravitate towards, so that we can increase our tax revenue and our home values. Now, some within the community have started to spark conversations, and I'll tell you, if you want to get Sean Galligan engaged, post something so false online, and I mean, I will bite all day long. But some have started to spark conversations within the community that this elected body and that this school administration cannot be trusted because the project is exceeding $350 million allowable limit. I'll go on the record right now and say we have one of the best superintendents in the state. One of the best superintendents in the state. And we have a very talented administrative team, talented teachers, faculty, and staff, and they're all very passionate. So I'm disheartened to have certain members within our general public challenge this committee and the administration because the project's going over budget. A project that has dragged on for over 4 years, or actually 7 years if you go back to 2017 when it was first being discussed. Now let me give you some comparison. This past Monday, WPRI Channel 12 reported on East Greenwich facing the very same issues relative to school construction and escalating costs. What did their community do? Okay, if you go online and you watch that meeting, their community came together to problem solve. Reasonable conversations were had, not finger pointing. There was thoughtful debate and realistic solutions proposed. Unlike other communities which have completed over budget projects, this city and left field flagged the issue immediately, brought it to the attention of every member up on this stage, our mayor, the city council president, and let me go on the record here as well and state these secretive, high-profile, backdoor dealing meetings that were being had were briefings, standard business meetings. I was there. There were no deals. Actually, I got knocked on the nose. Superintendent, I'm still hurting from that one. She would attest to it. It was an uncomfortable meeting because they're responsible for balancing the total budget and they're responsible for our school department. So what we did different was that we didn't just proceed and just start building the schools, break ground, and then force the taxpayer's hand 2 years down the road and say, you got this monument up, do you want us to finish it or not? And obviously, most taxpayers would say, well, now we're in this deep, so yeah, finish the building. But not Warwick. We continue to bring our community along because you deserve it. You continue to be informed tonight, even with the information we're providing to you being unfavorable. I go back to my original statement, remain positive. And I thank all of you, whether you're for the construction of the high schools or against it, for coming out and getting the information firsthand as opposed to going to various social media pages which spew absolute nonsense. So I would say that tonight, this meeting is the very definition of being straightforward and forthcoming with our community. As uncomfortable as this is for us up here, and I commend my colleagues, I commend Superintendent Danbrook, who this is not required of her. We called for this meeting as a committee. We said, let's go before the public and give them the information, and she was supportive, okay? As uncomfortable as this is, and with the administration and Dimeo and our OPM left field, we're here being transparent and being truthful. The misinformation continues to include a decline in enrollment, utilizing figures from an outdated report. Remember, that report was done before these schools would be built. New schools attract people, retain people. So I figured since we had such an unfavorable update this evening, I'd make this a fun and interactive moment in the meeting. So I want you to take this number. It's 3,500. That's 3,500 for the people that are hung up on our population. Okay, 3,500. Remember that number for a quick second. Also remember that in the state of Rhode Island, there's 39 cities and towns. You ready for this, Attorney Yanez? You ready to have some fun? Okay, here we go. Barrington, 3,309. That's the total number of students in Barrington. Now you're probably saying, well, great, Sean, you beat out Barrington. No, no, no. Let me go back to that 3,500 number for a minute. That's the total number of students within our elementary school population, K to 5, not including the awesome kids over at Warwick's Early Learning Center. There's a Galligan over there, so I had to include the word awesome in it, okay? So there's 3,500 elementary school students, not including pre-K, in our pipeline. They're gonna have to go to high school somewhere. That's a lot of kids. Barrington's total population, K to 12, 3,309. Our elementary school population beats that. Barrville, 2,037. Central Falls, 2,539. They're building a new school. Charahoe, 3,008. They did something a couple years ago. East Greenwich, 2,521. They're building schools. Exeter, West Greenwich, 1,578. Johnston, 3,172. They're building new schools. Lincoln, 3,340. Not only did they build new schools, they said, let's build a new field house. And here's Warwick. And we have people in our community not supporting the project. North Providence, 3,543. The only one to beat out our elementary school population if you do not include our pre-K students. But they're building new schools. Others are saying, stop the project, we should build one school. And I'll go on the record tonight. This is a challenge for everybody out there. I'll go on the record tonight that if you can find a 60 acre city-owned, it's got to be city-owned, parcel of land, I will give you the naming rights. Do I have that authority? Can I technically? I'll give you the naming rights to the mega high school. How's that? You need to find me a 60-acre city-owned parcel of land, and you can get the naming rights to that school. I do not care if it's on the north end. We won't have that discussion yet. I won't care if it's on the south end or central. Transportation, logistics, any of that. Let's not even get to that point. Find me 60 acres of land. To help you out, I'll give you a couple hints. First, you have City Park, right? Let's see if we can get City Park from the city. Deplete more of our recreational space. That would be very wise. Rocky Point, be beautiful scenery. I would love it. Out the back of the building, that'd be nice. Mr. Ricks, think about our own McCovey Cove, right? Our baseball field facing the water. That'd be sweet. Football field, Blake, what do you think about that? That'd be nice, right? Or stick with me on this. We could build the single mega high school next to the city dump, just adjacent to the gun range, okay, right on the Mickey Stevens property. Better yet, we should call the mayor's office, and maybe he'll contact Ryak. We've got a good relationship there. And maybe the airport will let us build on one of the runways. And our students and faculty can park in Garage C for peanuts.
Wasted reality-based.
I apologize to the mayor if he's watching this meeting.
Really?
Excuse me.
Listen to
Excuse
us.
me. You're gonna. Yep. You're coming up.
We're here
You're
to
coming.
listen to
You're
us.
coming. You're coming.
You told us about the
Yep.
increase.
Excuse me. Point of order. Point of order. Point of order. Point of order. We're not at the public comment period. We're not at the. There's going to be a time for public comment. Give me a second.
Get to the comments.
I'm getting there.
Too slow.
All right. I'll try to speed it up for you. If you want us to attempt to change the bond language, you risk us incurring millions more in debt by delaying the project. Should that language change be unsuccessful, and again, we still need the parcel of land before we proceed with that. In terms of reducing scope of the project, I will not deliver to this community anything less than what we showed the public in August of 2024. We already made substantial changes since the conceptual designs that we showed in 2022. If anything, I'm now expecting more, and I've been vocal that we require additional parking, larger gymnasiums, and the remaining contingency be spent on the outdoor complexes or paying down the bond so that we do not currently have we don't have what we currently have 5 years after the facilities are built. I remain consistent and transparent. I want to make sure that tonight I go on the record in saying the following. Though we are working very hard to deliver a quality product at the lowest cost possible, it is more likely than not that the cost will exceed $350 million. What that number is, it's not yet known, and as you heard Mr. Spiegel say, that number is consistently moving. And Mr. Cody, who works within the industry, will tell you that it's probably going to keep moving until they get to their final designs and they have an idea of what they're working with land and everything else. So it's not yet known, but we committed to this community that we would give an update in October, and that's what we're giving here tonight. Renovating schools that are at their end of life is simply not fiscally responsible, and it's against this body's it is not this responsibility of this body to balance the entire city's budget. It is our job to manage the largest city department in terms of workforce, total number of facilities, and daily number of customers, and spend the tax dollars that we are afforded responsibly. Which is why this evening I feel a responsible thing to do is express my public support to progress the construction of these facilities as presented in August. And if additional funds are required, that we identify funding solutions which may include use of bond premiums or going back to the voters so that way they have a say. The public deserves to know where I stand on this issue. I implore my colleagues to also state that. I stand with the children and the future of our great city and Warwick Public Schools. So at this time, I'll turn it over to any of my colleagues who might have other remarks. Ms. Kirby Chapman.
I would like to honor one of my constituents and ask if it's possible to make a motion to ask questions from the public.
Legal counsel.
Suspend the rules.
So Ms. Kirby Chapman did ask me that prior to the meeting, and what I would tell this body is that as the agenda is written, you do not indicate a public forum, therefore you are not allowed to entertain question and answer from the community. This body does not have the right to suspend the statute of the Open Meetings Act. They don't have that right.
Excuse me. We're not. Can we turn the microphones up? And could I just ask my colleagues to please speak into the microphones to the best of their ability? Ms. Kirby Chapman, you still, actually, do you want to restate what you just stated?
Sure, if that makes it easier. The question is, can we have what's known as an open forum under the Open Meetings Act? It's not a school committee rule, it's a Rhode Island general law. The only way this body can have an open forum and have the question and answer session if it was so advertised. This meeting has not been advertised this way. Legally, it's my opinion that at this meeting you cannot have a question and answer in an open forum. The agenda doesn't allow for it.
Excuse me, folks. After my colleagues make remarks, there will be a public comment period as advertised on the Secretary of State's website with our agenda. You will certainly have the opportunity to speak. I apologize if someone misled you prior to coming here this evening that it would be different, but we have one item of business before us this evening, and that's discussion update, construction in new high schools, and then after that we'll go into public comment. I ask that there be some decorum so that way we can work through this, and then we'll certainly open up the microphone and everybody will have the opportunity to speak. Ms. Kirby Chapman, you still have the floor.
I guess I just would ask, what I feel like I'm getting the question the most is, if we guaranteed everyone that was going to come in at 350 million, and we are saying now that we need 30 million more, what is the guarantee that it won't keep increasing? And then where do we, I mean, I guess everybody wants to know how much is this really gonna cost? And I mean, everyone's worried about the top.
That's a fair question. And we pose that same question to the people that will be building this project. They have told us that the number that I presented tonight is the top line, and that for the scope of work that we promised, or we showed, excuse me, in August, that number that we presented is what we need to make sure that we can deliver this project, including escalation to the midpoint of construction. That's important for us to know. We also have our owner's contingency at 17 million, which, as I've gone before the public before and stated, I do not believe in adding that number back into the project right now. That $17 million should be held in reserve in case of unforeseen circumstances and existing conditions not yet documented.
Do you yield? Thank you. Any other comments from members of the committee? Ms. Hazelwood?
Yes.
Okay.
So what you showed us in August and in September for Pilgrim and Tollgate, those schools cannot be finished at 350 million.
I do not believe, based on what we are currently seeing in the market, that you can build all of the scope of work as presented in those schools for 350 million without substantially reducing your contingency and changing the program, cutting space, essentially.
What kind of spaces would we be looking at to cut?
That is an administrative decision, and of course, if directed left field, working with the architects and our construction manager will identify scopes of work. As I said at a previous meeting, the easiest parts of a project to take out and then add back in are unfortunately some of the most popular parts of this project. That would be athletic fields.
What else has been suggested?
There has been suggestion of the removal of the quote-unquote second gym, the wrestling rooms that are currently the dance fitness rooms. There has been a suggestion also of instead of having a dedicated chorus room of choral students practicing on the stage as opposed to having their own dedicated choral room. These are the types of cuts. Having said that, just those cuts alone, you know, we're talking about eliminating scope of work here. It's substantial.
Any cuts to CTC?
Currently, no cuts to CTC, but in the current design. But yes, if we were held to this 350 million, and I was to advance the project, we would probably be recommending cuts to CTC.
I will go on the record as saying that I will not support any of those cuts going forward. That if that is the case, that would have to, in my opinion, it goes back to the voter, because those are subpar buildings that we are describing. So I want to go on the record for the, I'll use Mr. Tester's words, edification of the public, to let you know that I will not support those kind of cuts It isn't what our constituents voted on. I wouldn't have voted on something that you just described to me. I would have said no to that. So unless we can have what we were shown in August and September, I wouldn't be in favor of it going forward.
I hear you crystal clear.
That's all.
Do you yield, Ms. Hazelwood? Thank you. Any other comments from members of the committee? Ms. Backus?
This has been a long and arduous process. I was the chair of the committee in 2017 when this all started, and when we worked very diligently and hard with RIDE to come up with a plan for renovations for the buildings, I should say. When we finally got to RIDE, who had worked with us through this whole process, you could have blown me over with a feather. They looked at us and said, "We're not going to approve this. We're not going to approve this because the renovations will cost almost as much as building brand new schools. You have to build brand new schools." So there are people in this room, Councilman Lattiser is one of them, who worked very hard on that whole process, only to be knocked down and to lose 2 years of a project, and to have to go back, and money as well, to do all the preliminary work. And then we had to go back to the drawing board and start working toward putting designs together and all the other things that need to happen in order to build structures such as this. The costs, it's the economy. When it takes 11 years to achieve 50 basis points and the world goes crazy and things go up 50 basis points in 2 years, we know we've got a problem. We know that the world has a problem. But we have to do what's right for these kids. And I went on the record before, and I will go on the record again. It's about the kids. It's about the city. The right thing to do is to build these schools and to build them properly and to plan. And if we don't do that, then this will be a boondoggle. It will be a huge boondoggle. People will continue to leave this city. Our kids will continue to opt out of Warwick Public Schools and go to other districts where we have to pay for them to go. But they have every right under RIDE to do that. We have no control over that, none whatsoever. We cannot let the okay or the good be the enemy of what is best for our kids and our city. Because I said it in 2013. I was one of the first to mention new schools, and I talked about vets, and I talked about vets not being made into a middle school. And that's all water under the bridge. There's nothing we can do about it. I talked about trading buildings for buses and everything else. But the fact is that if we're going to be a first-rate city and a first-rate school system, then we have to do this right. Because we don't need a boondoggle on our hands. And I will never support second rate for our kids, because it's all about our kids. And it's also about the future and the health of the city of Warwick, and us leaving something for those kids to grow up in and to continue to reside in. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Backus. Mr. Testa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been a supporter and been deeply involved in this process since the beginning. My youngest child graduated this school in 2020, and I suppose I could have just thrown my hands up and said, "Why the hell with it? It's someone else's problem." I chose not to do that. I chose to stay involved. But I'm going to say some things that may have already been said by the chair and some other of my colleagues. But the timeline matters here, because in November of 22, the voters approved the bond. And it wasn't until September of 23 that the council okayed the release of the money, right? Because there was a peer review of our peer review, and that's fine. But no one can deny that those 10 months added to the cost. But we all agreed to it, so that is what it is. So hopefully no one was kidding themselves that that 10-month delay wouldn't have a price tag to it. Mr. Spiegel, quick question. Within this design process, how far along are we percentage-wise?
I'd say about 40%.
Oh, 40%. Okay. So, and you've said every single time that you've presented to us that there will be hard conversations. And everybody knew that. And you said they get harder the closer you got to the actual design. So I think we're approaching that point now. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that's not to say that I'm supportive of the potential cuts you put out there, but I think people need to understand that that's potential. Your job is to come up with 175 different items that you could possibly do, put a price tag on them. And it's up to administration and this body and the building committee to a lesser degree to determine, okay, we can live without that, we can't live without that, right? And at some point we'll arrive to that. So my point is, there's a lot of bridges to cross in this process. We haven't come to all of them yet. We don't know what all of them are going to be bridging over. So the 387, you had mentioned in your comments that you said that the construction manager said it was a worst case scenario. So the 387, you said that's the top line, that's the high number?
That includes escalation, correct?
Right, okay. So I think we're close to that point, but this is the time to echo what the chair said. I think we have to work together here. We have to do this collaboratively, because we can't have a situation like we had with Tollgate, where they built Tollgate and there was no money for an auditorium. So we waited 20 years for an auditorium. It's utterly ridiculous. Now, maybe in 1970, that's how we did things, but we can't do things like that. I do have to point out, because I think the chair mentioned it and someone else mentioned it, about stopping the project or delaying the project. We all know delay costs money, costs a lot of money. We also need to know that of this project, there's 20% reimbursement incentives, totaling about $63 million. Those go away if we kill the project. And they could potentially go away if we delay the project, because if we don't finish on time, you don't get your reimbursements. That's $63 million. The state of Rhode Island, the General Assembly, has not re-upped those reimbursements. So we want to kill it and we want to start over. I'm sure there are people that would be giddy at that notion. But financially, it's stupid. Because you throw away $173 million in reimbursement. So what are our options? We want to build one gigantic high school, a super high school, and I've seen some pie in the sky ideas with one high school in the center of the city with the public library branch there, fields move, combined city field. What do you think that's going to cost? And we're going to get reimbursed at 35%. So your remodeling number was roughly $300 million. And a little history lesson here, I was in the meeting with Dr. De Silva from RIDE when we presented the remodeling plans for $300 million, and they looked at us and said, you can build new, the delta isn't that steep. And he was right. He was right. And the problem they have with major reno is that they had two examples on hand. They had Lincoln High School and East Providence High School. Lincoln High School was a major remodel, and if it wasn't for COVID, they would never finished on time. And their objection to that is it takes you 5 years to remodel a school. So every year you're moving kids around during the construction process. It's terrible for learning. And the other example they had was East Providence, built a new high school. Now they built a new high school when interest rates were about 1%. But that was, so they said, look, you can't affect these kids. You'd have an entire cohort of a high school class that would move around every single year in that same building while they were tearing down portions of it and remodeling other portions of it. So that's why it was rejected. So they were right on that. So If we want to just go back, build one high school, that's $200 million. And do we not remodel the other one? I don't think anyone would agree to that. So now you're looking at probably 240, 250 with a 35% reimbursement. You'll pay more net than you're going to pay with these two at 350. So the $300 million remodeling number that you gave us, which is 35%. So why would you even think that that's a plausible thing to do? I don't get it. I don't get it. We're worried about the taxpayers. Everyone up here is one of them. Almost everyone, I think. We're all taxpayers. I know my taxes are going to go up. I knew that. I knew that from the beginning. So I get criticized for saying that how much the tax rate goes up as a city function, as you well know. The school department doesn't set the tax rate. City sets the tax rate. So questions about how much of my tax is going to go up should be directed towards the city. We don't determine that. So I've been criticized for saying this, and I say it all the time, that we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I'm concerned that there's a danger that that's the road we may be trying to go down. I think prudence dictates that we need to lay out a plan that provides 2 high schools at 350 with a detailed and prioritized add-alt list. But we need to break ground because delay is not good. Delay is more expensive. So to not start construction is going to cost a hell of a lot more money than we're looking at right now. And that would be totally irresponsible, in my view. And I'd add one more point. We talk about we lose kids. I think the chair mentioned it. 60% of our pathway kids, I think it's 63 actually, go to North Kingstown and Pontiganset. North Kingstown has a business pathway. We have a business pathway. Ours is more rigorous. They've got better facilities. Pontiganset has better facilities. We have very similar pathways too. So my nieces went to NK. They were both swimmers, but we would go, and they played other sports too. We would go to North Kingstown. And honestly, and I've said it before, it was a tale of 2 cities. Tale of 2 cities. You go to North Kingstown and see what they have, and then you come here. And my 3 kids graduated from here. Or go to Tollgate. Not much better. So I agree with the chair. I think the project has to proceed. A change is going to be made? Yeah, probably. But we don't know what the scope of those changes are. Not every change is necessarily a bad change. But we're not going to know that until we see what exactly you and Dimeo propose, right? And costs can change too. Costs don't always go up. Sometimes they come down or they flatten. So, and that happens. It happens in the construction materials industry. It happens in every single industry. So, I think, again, I'll just close by saying I think we break ground. We need to break ground, and we'll cross each bridge as we get to it. And if it does require more money, then we'll have to work collaboratively with the city. You can't just sit up here on high and say, we need X amount. So, but that's why we have a project manager, and that's why I have a construction manager at risk. And to me, the operative term in that is at risk. So there's risk they have to assume too. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tessa. Ms. Bax.
Couple of questions. Mr. Siegel, how can we trust that this project won't go over budget again? That 50 basis points is going to happen in a year now? How can we trust that $390 million is the be-all and end-all? What guarantees will you give us? What can we tell the taxpayers?
The guarantee will be in the guaranteed maximum price that we signed with Dimeo, and they have said that 387.5 is the number. But further than that, Left Field is not in the business of gilding a lily and kicking a can down the road. We do not bury our heads in the sand. That is not a tactic, and I think Chairman Galligan mentioned that earlier. It would have been a disservice for us to have kept moving, gone into construction, and not brought this to your attention, and then force the issue 2 years from now when we were already under construction to ask for more money. We understand that today, by giving you this worst case scenario, could potentially kill the project. However, it is within our duty, we believe, to tell you this worst case scenario now so that you can have these difficult conversations now and not a year and a half from now when I'm already in the ground and my foundations are set.
That is your responsibility as a fiduciary.
As an owner's project manager, correct.
Yes. We hired you to make sure that those things happen properly, and so thank you for that. Numbers matter. The longer we put this off, the more it will cost. The cities, there are a number of cities and towns in the state that have chosen to put their cities and towns in a real bad position, because when they found out that the prices were skyrocketing, they didn't say anything. They waited until they broke ground and were halfway through to throw the monkey wrench in. Warwick School Committee and the Warwick Public School Administration is not here to hoodwink anyone, to throw a monkey wrench into anyone's day. We want everyone to know what's going on, and that's why we did our due diligence, as Mr. Galligan said, to bring this forward now, so that there are no surprises, so that people know immediately. The superintendent did not, she learned and immediately went to the mayor and told him what was going on, and then went to the council. She did not delay. Within 24 hours, she met with those principals. And that is to be commended, and that is how we should be doing business, because this is the taxpayers' money. And this is our city, and these are our kids. And I couldn't have children, but every single one of these kids is my kid. And that's how I see it. That's how I feel it. And that's how we all have to look at things, because we owe them a bright future. No one is entitled to anything except for our kids. And in this country, a free and fair public education is a right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Backus.
It's okay.
You have something to say, or are you good?
I have something to say.
Oh, okay. Ms. Hayes.
I worked in this school for 7 years. I've been throughout these buildings. We do need new schools. There is no question that we need the new schools. But we don't need subpar schools. We need schools that will foster the types of education that we can deliver optimally. And to make more cuts to these buildings that affect the things that Mr. Spiegel spoke of, that is not optimum. And if you're asking people to pay for a $350 million bill plus, you need to deliver quality buildings, not, concessional buildings. They should be something we can be proud of in 20 years. Something the taxpayers are not going to mind so much if we deliver fantastic buildings. They're going to look back with their kids and say, those were great schools. It brought families into Warwick. It brought children, kept the children in Warwick. And I'm all about kids. Let me tell you, I am all about kids. We need to give them the best, especially when the bill is on the backs of these people. It needs to be the best. What you were delivering, what you showed Mr. Spiegel on August and September, they weren't the buildings that we promised in the beginning, but they were good buildings. Mr. Cody, you said beautiful schools when you took the mic. But we have to make sure, we know those schools are going to cost more than what we said. We need to consider that. We need to look at it now. Do we want to give these things to the children of our future? Do we? Do we care that much about the kids in this city? Are we willing to give them this? We do need to have a question and answer forum at some point. It's only right. We have to have that in the very near future. We have to give people the opportunity to ask questions. It's the right thing to do. But in the meantime, I would say, Mr. Galligan, you did the right thing by giving all of us all this information as soon as you got it. You gave it to us, we gave it to the community. There was no backroom deals. There were no stories and special meetings going on behind closed doors. What he said is the way it happened. So everybody knows I'm pretty much an open book. I'm telling you the truth. This is the way it happened. And I'm telling you the truth about everything here. So that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Hazelwood. Okay, so Mr. Spiegel, thank you very much this evening for your presentation. For the community's knowledge, we will again do another update in January, and we'll work towards figuring out how we can do a Q&A type forum. We'll have to work with our attorney, make sure that the agenda is drafted appropriately, and that we set everything up so that way people are here to give you the answers. So with no other new business before us, we're now on to the public comment portion of our agenda. Again, this is a public comment portion. I just ask whether you're for the schools, against the schools, to please just be respectful. There are some young children in attendance, so use appropriate word choice. Individual comments will be respectfully limited to 3 minutes per person. That's 3 minutes per person, with public comment not to exceed 45 minutes, though I imagine, given the community sentiment around this, that this committee would likely extend that. Though content of comments will not be restricted again, it is the hope of this committee that citizens, committee members, and the administration alike will be respectful of each other's right to speak, tolerant of different points of view, and mindful of everyone's times. Speakers are asked to state their name for the record. So again, I hope nobody was misled this evening thinking that this was a Q&A. It's a public comment period. You get 3 minutes to speak. And I just kindly ask that everybody else that's listening in to the public comments, please be respectful. Whether you agree with the comments that are being made or disagree, the people that came here tonight to speak, they're owed that right to make their comment or remarks. So let's give them that courtesy. So
thank you very much,
Mr. Speaker.
Chairman, members of the committee. I just one last remark. The plans that we showed you in September and August have fully air-conditioned auditoriums.
Hello, Josh Hatfield, Warwick resident. I yield my time to Rob Cody.
It's 3 minutes per person. 3 minutes per person. So if you'd like to speak, sir, your clock is still running, but you get 3 minutes per person.
So, where's the rules that said we can't do that?
I'll pause your time. Individual comments will be respectfully limited to 3 minutes per person, with public comments not to exceed 45 minutes. I will restart your time.
But it doesn't say you can't yield your time.
Individual comments will be respectfully limited to 3 minutes per person, with public comment not to exceed 45 minutes. I apologize, but this is what's on the agenda. These are the policies we follow. The ACLU recommended this back in February. There was a full-blown report. If you'd like, resume your time.
Okay, yeah. I might just say that, in reflection, it took a while for you folks to get around to the taxpayer impact here. And, there's a lot of elderly folks that live in our community. And, the benefits to them, I'm not sure will be realized in their lifetime. So I think you should probably put more focus on that community and less on, bringing the children in or bringing in new folks. Because there's a lot of people at that age bracket that are going to be negatively impacted. And I think you should be focused on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be sure to include that as part of our next community update. I appreciate your comment.
Rob Cody, Ward 7. So the 3-minute time limit is ridiculous on such an important project. But there were some really, really nice slides that Mr. Siegel showed you tonight, except for the fact they were available 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago. If you remember 2 years ago, I took the microphone at Warwick Vets and I said to everybody, and I'm going to say it again, you have all been wrong on 100% of these school aspects. And I told you then 2 years ago that there'd be no possible way you could build these schools for less than $382 million. And you could have got a fifth grader that was proficient in math to tell you the same thing. Now we're paying $110,000 a month to somebody who's been wrong every time he's come before the residents, and we can't ask any questions. It's deplorable. In the private sector, you all would be fired if not prosecuted. You falsified all aspects of this. You hid documents. Mr. Testa hid the third-party review. We can't ask questions. 2.5 years, and I can't ask a technical question. It's probably okay, because none of you could answer it. I would like you to name one thing, one aspect about these schools that I've come to you for 2.5 years where I've been wrong on. Air conditioning, steel package, framings, facade, moment frames, everything. But you don't want to listen. You could have, if you listen to somebody that's smarter than you and has more experience, I've been building schools for 30 years. You could have had a contingency plan, but now you guys come to tap yourself on the back and say, oh, we're doing a great thing because we're going to allow you guys to speak for 3 minutes and we're going to bring you new information. It's too late for that. You need to listen to the constituents. We're the ones that have to pay the bills. All we hear is about the kids, right? It's all about the kids. So you want to build these schools? I'm going to tell you what you need to do right now. You put an immediate moratorium on raises in the city for all city workers, teachers, administration, everything for the next 10 years. And then you institute 35% to co-pay for their health care. And then you know what you're going to see? You're going to see every single teacher and every single worker in the city of Warwick, they're going to be waving at you. You know what they're going to wave to you? One finger. Guess which one? That's what's going to happen. It's all about shared sacrifice. Where's the shared sacrifice, Mr. Galligan? On me? On the senior citizens? We've got women here that are about to lose their houses that can't afford medication. And let me tell you something, and I've worked with Dimeo a long time. They're the best in the business. But I'm going to tell you something else. It's not going to be $387 million.
30 seconds.
All right? Every school I'm on now is north of 800. And here you got, your OPM came to you and said $700 a square foot 6 weeks ago with a $26 million contingency fund. That's changed. The facade has changed. The outside has changed. And every school that they're on right now, all 5 of them, are from $785 to $945. But they're going to build schools in Warwick for $700? Is the Warwick taxpayer that dumb? Are we going to believe that? The problem is this. You guys have been wrong on every single aspect of this. Why should we believe anything you say now? You're wrong then, you're going to be wrong again.
Thank you.
And you guys should be disgraced that we don't have the opportunity to ask questions.
Robert Cushman, a former Warwick City Councilman, school committee member. You know, one of the things I had some prepared remarks, but I'm not going to say them today, but one of the things that we've never talked about in the city is what's the fiscal health of the city? Can we afford to build these high schools? What's the effect on the property taxes going to be? Well, there is a way that you can measure that. It's called net position. And if you look at the net position in the city of Warwick, we are the second worst run city in the state of Rhode Island. Our net position is negative $500 million. We're right behind Providence that has a negative billions more than that, which we know they're a train wreck and they should be heading for bankruptcy. But it's really interesting because, you know, Ms. Backus talked about in 2017 when we talked about building these schools. Well, our net position back then was negative $347 million. 5 years later, we're a negative $549 million. Nobody wants to talk about this stuff. Nobody wants to talk about this. And what has the school committee been doing? You've been upping your spending in the last 4 to 5 years by $25 million. I keep these stats. You haven't shown any kind of restraint on your spending. On the city side, we have a plan in place that we're going to spend $200 million in the next 9 years on free lifetime health care for retirees. Think about that again. $200 million in the next 10 years. That's enough to pay for a school. So my whole point about this is that you got to start looking at the health of the city and what are you going to do budget-wise so people don't basically be taxed out of their houses. Warwick's debt is going to be 164% over the maximum allowed limit by state law. Think about that for a second. If you were a businessman or a homeowner and you went to a bank and said, I want to borrow more money, but I'm already 164% over my credit limit, they would laugh you out of the bank. So what's going to happen in this city for the next 10 to 15 years when we are so far over our credit limit, and this doesn't count the additional $40 to $50 million more it looks like we're going to need to borrow. This city has no long-term planning. We run year by year. The school committee has been outrageous in the amount of raises. They don't care about the seniors in the city or the people on fixed income. You've got to take a look at the fiscal health of the city. And like I said again, I'm going to reiterate, we are one of the worst run cities in the state of Rhode Island, and you people don't give a damn.
30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ed Lattiser. I'm the councilman in Ward 5. I voted no on 2 high schools from the get-go. I voted no because I knew the project could never be completed as presented. I resigned from the school building committee during the first 10 minutes of its first meeting because it was clear to me that the fix was in and the taxpayers were out. It was clear that the school department was going to move ahead with this project regardless if it made sense for the students, for the teachers, or the taxpayers. I wanted no part of it. I'm not here to say I told you so. That's not productive. What I am here to tell you is that it's not too late to fix this. The school department wants to tell you that we are too far down the road to turn around. They want to convince you that something is better than nothing. That's not the choice we should be forced to make. The school department is trying to convince you that it's okay to go from the state-of-the-art schools that you were promised, that you voted for, to smaller schools that cut every corner imaginable. Let me list some of these bait and switch cuts. They eliminated 90,000 square feet of buildings, eliminated solar panels, eliminated over 100 parking spaces, smaller gyms with less bleachers, smaller auditoriums with less seats, lower ceilings, smaller and fewer sports facilities, smaller and fewer windows. And the real joke is tempered air as opposed to air conditioning. But the list of reductions is not the worst part. The worst part is the way that they're talking to you, as if you don't realize what they're trying to pull. If air tempered was so great, why didn't you sell that in the beginning? The biggest slap in the face is the designers trying to make you believe that they are providing much needed wall space by raising windows. They're not raising windows, they're eliminating windows and square footage of glass that they told you was imperative for 21st century schools. Then to add insult to injury, after spending millions of dollars to companies to evaluate these properties, they tell us, we just learned there was over 2 acres of wetlands we didn't see before, so we need to change the toll gate footprint of school by 75% from what we told you. I'm not against good education, and I'm not against new schools. I am against hoodwinking the taxpayers. I am against moving forward ahead blindly with projects that made no sense then and make no sense now. If you want to do what's best for the children, let's not commit them to paying higher taxes for the rest of their lives. Let's go back to RIDE and insist they do what's right for Warwick. When circumstances change, the courageous path is not to stick to the plan come hell or high water. The courageous thing to do is admit that you're on the wrong path and redirect your efforts. The past is the past. Let's move forward towards a future that makes sense for our city and one that we agree on with all the information on the table. Let's send this project back to the voters. I said it 2 years ago, and I'll say it again. Let's send this project back to the voters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeremy Ricks, City Council, Ward 2. To respond to an earlier comment, I have to agree with Mr. Cushman on some things. The city, more years than not, over the last 50+ years, has been run terribly. Starting in the 1970s, when the original Fire Police 1 pension was given away without the employees putting in a dime, without the city putting in a dime, for what, close to 20 years? And then, and only then, we come up with a 40-year plan to fund it, and more recently, the city abandons that 40-year plan to shift to a pay-as-you-go. It's madness. We have to actually pay for the benefits, the salaries, the pensions that we're giving out. And so, in the midst of all of this, I'm seeing a school committee here that is trying its very best to change the path, trying to be transparent. I had excellent conversations with the chair, with the vice chair, Leah Hazelwood, and I want to thank you both for your time. I would have felt free to call all of the members of the school committee. I just didn't want to bother you all during this very busy week. I think that all of you have the right ideas in mind here. It's not your fault that the costs escalated as they did. Perhaps, obviously, in retrospect, there should have been more safeguards here. There should have been different ways to look at this. And when people play Monday morning quarterback, well, they look like geniuses at that point in time. And the fact of the matter is that no one can perfectly predict the future in these situations. We trust the experts. We trust those that are hired. So I'm here to say that failure is not an option.
30 seconds.
Failure is not an option. We have to figure out what is the best path forward for Warwick's future. We have to have excellent high schools moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cindy Wilson. So, Mr. Galligan, you said that your child will be going to the schools if they're built. Your child probably will end up with the bill as well for these schools. I am one of those retired elderly people, so I don't benefit. I don't have a child in the I don't have anything that it benefits from this. But what I do think about is it's amazing how this was presented. So I was in the beauty industry. So if someone came into the salon and said, hey, how much for a haircut? $30. What does that include? Well, I'm going to wash your hair, I'm going to do a consultation, I'm going to cut your hair, I'm going to style it. And then on the way to the chair, I said, oh, you know what? It's actually going to be $30, but I'm not going to do the wash part. I'm going to just spray you down. And then as we got closer to my station, I said, and the consultation, that's out the door. Sorry, now you're just down to a wash. I'm going to cut you and the blow dry. Sorry, that's out. I'd be out of the salon, and I don't have an option to move out of this city. It's been in my head because of the taxes. Luckily, I have a short-term rental, and I'm able to make money with my home, which is how I survive. But what you're asking of the taxpayers, especially the elderly people, is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. We can't do this. We cannot afford a tax increase. I don't believe we need 2 new schools. I don't know exactly what the numbers are as far as the attendance goes. I don't know all the plans that you were talking about. It's just simple. We can't afford it. Forget all the minutia. We can't afford it. Sadly, the taxpayers have never had any representation in the process. However, by city charter, Mayor Percosi has had the authority to appoint up to 4 taxpayers to sit on the school committee and make decisions on this project, but he refused to do it. I wonder why. I wonder why. And why aren't everybody should tomorrow call Mayor Percosi's office, he should be here, and ask him. Ask him. Why didn't he do anything? Why isn't he doing anything? Why is he continuing to drive us, this city, into the ground? We all should make a call tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Janelle O'Brien. I've lived here all my life, and my folks came in 1938. And I went to Pilgrim. My graduating class is like twice the size of the current graduating class. And you gave frivolous plans that you showed us, and we really can't afford, everything. Like the treadmills, and the library had all these little tables, and I thought, oh boy, another place they're going to sit around and make a lot of noise talking. And then there's the broad street with the tables there for hanging out. I mean, it just looked like there are a lot of places to hang out. I think that's frivolous. We can't afford them. I'm really concerned about my future. Where can I go with my stuff if I'm homeless? You know, I've always had a place to live. And I'm, you know, considering there are other people, other seniors who could lose their homes. I worked all my life. My income is nothing like what people are getting hired at now and starting out. I've got an MBA. By the time I earned it, I just couldn't handle any management job. So you got to consider where we're coming from and what we're going through. I've worked hard all my life, and to think that I have to give up my home for the students to have a happy place. I really want it to be a serious school where people are serious about their academics, are serious about their futures, and they want to represent their families, their city, as responsible people, and to learn, you know, to be good math people like Bob and Rob, you know. I mean, they really need people who are serious about math and science. So that's what I'm concerned about. No, get rid of the frivolity. And I was thinking too about the gyms.
30 seconds.
If they had the gyms adjoining and they could open up and let the public in and for different events, you know, that the city would be using the buildings more. I mean, you know, at least Pilgrim, I don't know about the setup for Tollgate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne Miller. I just want to address that we were told that the population of the high school, you compared the population of the high school to other cities. Well, within our own city, the population has decreased of high school students. You made the assumption that if we build beautiful new schools, that the population will go up because they'll be attracted to the new schools. However, a lot of people are not just going to be looking at the buildings, they're going to be looking at the test scores of the children. Now, I'm going to tell you, I have compassion for teachers. I've taught Sunday school for 40 years, and I've seen everything in a Sunday school class, and I know the difficulties are greater to teach math, science, you know, the things that you need, the skills that you need to go forward in life. So there is other factors that are causing, I'm not blaming it all on the teachers, is what I'm saying. My other point to you, Mr. Galligan, is that you gave accolades to Mr. Cody's ability and skills with mathematics and building schools and his business, his acumen there. And Mr. Cushman has been a past city council president. I believe he has a master's in business. He's an executive at CVS. And you said that he says false things on web pages, and that is entirely not true. His facts are based on math, and I challenge you to go head-to-head with him and back yourself up. Number 3, this co-payment from whatever it was, ARPA funds or whatever, right, okay. Let's do some simple math, because I'm used to breaking it down for kids between 5 and 8 years old. I'm going to buy a car, a nice car, maybe a high-end Toyota, maybe even a Mercedes. My parents say, I'm going to give you a down payment. I'm going to give you $5,000. And I go and I check out the financing. We're good, $5,000. Now, my uncle comes along and says, I'll give you another $5,000 if you buy another Toyota or whatever, Mercedes. But I don't have the money to pay for 2 cars. I'm only approved my my budget is only for one. So it doesn't matter if another 5,000 or 63 million to build 2 schools when we can't afford 2 schools. We can only afford 1. I hope the public is getting the logic behind this, not emotions. We need to stop and rethink. And this is another should-have moment. Maybe you said Rob's was a should-have moment. This is another should-have moment. Before we go forward, we need to stop.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christopher O'Connell, and I am 21 years old, and I've been a resident of this city since 2006 when my family moved here. And I've been in the public school system my entire life. From Warwick Neck to Gorton, I was the last 7th grade class of Gorton. I was the first 8th grade class of your consolidated middle school. And then I finally ended up here, where I did not graduate during COVID, unfortunately. But I have had heavy involvement within my city. I know a lot of people here, and I know a lot of good people here. They're all trying. I know every person here is trying their best to give us what we voted on. But unfortunately, we are now in the position of having to have these conversations. And the real question is, why are we having these conversations? And we're having these conversations because, unfortunately, at the beginning of this process, we were told that we could build these schools for $350 million, and unfortunately, I don't believe that was ever the case, because the evidence proves it, and I don't have to repeat it because Mr. Lattiser already said it. Since we started this, we have been cutting since day one, okay? And I'm gonna say here and tell everyone, if we don't build these high schools, you can take a shovel to this city. Okay, we need them more than ever. The students need them. I certainly could have benefited from a nicer high school. Okay, I remember when I went into a classroom at Vets when I was in middle school, I couldn't breathe because the damn unit ventilator was steaming up the room so badly that I had to go outside. Okay? We all know that we have problems. Why are we trying to build these schools? We're trying to build these schools because we're trying to increase the population of this city. Not building them is not going to increase the population. It's definitely going to decrease. Because why are we going to have renovated schools when other districts have brand new schools? Okay? You've come honest. It's all right. I've made mistakes too. Definitely. I know what it's like to make a mistake. I think everyone here knows what it's like to make a mistake. But we need to move forward. We can't look back. We got to push forward. We need these schools, okay? And we need them more than ever. And that's why we're doing them, is to better the city, not to put the city in a... The city's already in a position to fail. We're already in a position of failure, okay? Right now we are. And that's why we're building them. And unfortunately, the whole process has not been the best of, it could have been better. It really could have been better, okay? And there's one other thing I want to say, which is the reason why I can come up here with confidence and say all of this is because I have also had the opportunity to work for a contractor who has done tens of millions of dollars of work for this city, good work for this city. In fact, it's the only reason why we can continue with the school system. So, finishing up, I was disappointed that you didn't select them. They were $5 million cheaper, but we must move forward, we must continue with the plan, and we must figure out ways to save this city, and that is as simple as that. And I want to thank everyone for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. There are a lot of emotions in this room tonight, so thank you for allowing me my 3 minutes. My name is Ellen Johnston. I'm a Warwick homeowner, taxpayer, a 20-year educational advocate, but most importantly, I am a parent of 2 children within this district, and I voted yes on this bond very proudly. 4 years ago, my family moved to Warwick from out of state. My husband and I, are in the minority here. We still feel like outsiders because we weren't born and raised here in the good old days of Warwick and Rhode Island. And sure, we love coffee milk coffee milk. We love coffee milk and things like that, but we haven't quite found our niche. When we started our children's school career here 4 years ago, we were very excited, but I will tell you, our very first impression walking onto campus was, ooh, these schools are dilapidated, antiquated, and not pretty. The fields were old, and everybody kept telling us, give it a chance, give it a chance. And I said, okay, well, you know, as an educator, obviously we're going to give it a chance. And I'm glad we did, because our experience here has been fantastic, despite all of the other things going on. I will say that a common observation that we have learned within our time here is that there are a lot of people who like to complain. There are. I'm one of them. I think we all are guilty of complaining here and there and everywhere. But sometimes it's just too much, and complaints only get us so far, right? We have to think of solutions. So let's put our heads together and think of solutions. And I would often tell my students and my staff, come with a complaint, that's fine, I'll hear you, we'll validate your feelings, but you need to come with a solution. Okay, bring something to the table that's productive to this conversation, please. Education is changing, and thank goodness for that, okay? I would like to ask everyone here, and whoever's watching tonight, if you know about the vision of the graduate for Warwick Public Schools. And if you don't, I encourage you to educate yourself. It's on the website, okay? Whether you have children now, whether you are a retired citizen, this matters. It matters generationally, as the school board has said. Warwick Public Schools' vision of a graduate is to develop students into empowered citizens, empathetic collaborators, skilled communicators, innovative problem solvers, critical thinkers, and healthy and balanced learners. And those hangout spaces aren't just hangout spaces. We need to teach our students to communicate with one another, to be able to come to a quorum
30 seconds.
and speak appropriately to our peers. And set aside the anger and the emotions. Step back and take a breath and present yourself professionally in a public environment. And I may not agree with every decision that the school committee makes or with everyone's comment, but I can go to bed at night knowing that I'm advocating for my children, even in this heavy election season that we're in, and I'm ready to put the past to bed. Get over it is what I really want to say. And I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Let us all get along.
Thank you. Just before you get going, sir, 1 second. Respectfully, committee, we're at the 45-minute point. I'd be looking for someone to make a motion to, made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Ms. Hazel.
Second.
Ms. Backus. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
I don't want to take up too much time. My name is Jeremy Johnston. My wife, Ellen, beautifully said a lot of what I'd like to say too. So I would just like to say, I know that we can't ask questions here today. However, if I was able to ask questions, a couple things that I would like to know specifically are, what are any sunk costs that we have into this already? I know that there has to be some costs with what we've done. We've been told we're about 40% of the way through designing. I'd really like to know what some of that is, because going back on that, those are things that I'm perceiving we lose, so that's just another way that I'm looking at we lose some money on some of these things. Also, he talked very much during his VM section on things about how he's knocked down prices 2 times, talking with Demio and stuff, and he said very often, hey, this doesn't impact education, doesn't impact education, doesn't impact education. I'd like to know specifically what it does impact. I know we've changed footprints on things, I know we've changed parking spots and other things, but what are some of those impacts? Is it past that? Is some of this integrity of the building? Things like that are things that I would very much like to know about this. Also, he spoke a long time about a top end of things, $387.5 million. This is it. This is our worst case scenario, worst case scenario, worst case scenario. While I might not necessarily believe that is, because prices do rise and that may happen, I would really like to know what's our bottom end on that? What is something there, like what is a median for that and what is a bottom end on that? I think a lot of the discussion here isn't necessarily about whether or not we want to spend the extra on this, but whether or not this project should have been initiated in the first place. I speak very much in favor of going through with the construction of these 2 schools. I very much believe that these children are our future. And I don't think that this falls upon our great school committee here to figure out how to balance a budget for all of Warwick. There are very much things within this town that certain people use, and they might benefit from it tax-wise, and there's other things within this town that I might not take advantage that someone else, you know, is able to take advantage of, and it helps them out. Whether it's street construction, whether it's, you know, the library, whether it's the senior center, whether it is these new schools. It needs to be a balanced budget all around, and it does not fall solely on the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, could I just ask you a favor? Can you go over and see Mr. Spiegel there? You had a lot of great questions that probably other members in the community would like answered, and we'll get those into our next update coming January, if not a fact sheet put out between now and then. Thank you. Apologies for that.
That's okay. Good evening, committee, and thank you for the opportunity to at least get some thoughts out. And I appreciate all the constructive comments that came before me, and I hope my comments are intended to be constructive. But I think you're missing, and you've devalued,
Could
actually.
you just give us your name for the record so we could reach out to you afterwards?
Oh, Michelle Komar, and I'll send you my email. Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you.
Yes, certainly. I think that we don't want to devalue the contributions of intelligent citizens in Warwick and taxpayers, and I invite you to publicize work sessions in accordance with the Open Meetings Act and invite public non-voting members. I don't think that interferes with the mayor's rights to or not want to add voting members, because there's a lot of citizens that would contribute to construction, permitting, the Open Meetings Act. We're well versed in that. We've attended AG hearings about it. It doesn't take much to put on a line, Q&A, public answer, question and answer period. And I'm disappointed that's not here tonight. But I'm a firm believer that more heads from different aspects are a good way to do it. So I encourage you to increase your membership just for work sessions. They don't have to be voting members, because you're missing a lot. And you're missing some more sensitive, qualitative things like accountability and confidence. That's where I have a problem, because I've attended the city council meetings and answers were not given when they released the $350 million bonds. Taxpayers' questions were ignored. We can't tell you how much it's going to cost because the evaluations are coming up. It depends on how much your house is assessed at. No, you can evaluate the increases by percentage. I think you can break it down so the general public can understand that. And we don't have that answered to this day. Peter Schaefer at a city council meeting recently said, and I couldn't believe he said this, that we don't know at what phase RIDE is going to reimburse this project. Is it when we construct both school buildings, or is it when we construct the school buildings and the new ball fields? This probably results in
30 seconds.
Millions of taxpayers' dollars, if I don't know the figure. But that has to be ironed out. Borings. WSA didn't put borings in. The sheeting didn't go in for their levee that they needed to increase for height. Boring should be done the right amount, the right areas, so that that is not an unknown and an additional expense. And I can email you more comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name's Tom Dillon. Myself and my wife grew up in this city. We went to Tollgate. We left the state and came back. I can tell you that we went to another city first, North Kingstown, but wanted to have our children grow up in this community and moved back because we wanted them to have the same experiences and education that we had growing up. I now have 3 kids in the school system, 1 in the middle school and 2 in the elementary school, and I'm proud that they're in this school system. But I can tell you that we're asking the teachers to teach our kids with facilities that are just not up to date to how we're supposed to teach our kids today. We're asking kids, when they get to college, to learn in different ways and to perform projects and present in different ways that they're not able to teach at schools nowadays because the facilities are just not up to date. And we need to make sure that we're preparing our kids for those next generations. And I've been hearing everyone say, well, what is the benefit to me? So first thing I've always heard growing up, that help your community out. Our kids need our help, and we should be helping them. Second thing, if you want to be selfish and say, what's the exact benefit for me? As you grow schools and you bring in more families, it grows the amount of demand for housing and for things in this community, which will then help you because your houses go up. You have more value in your home because the community goes up. It's simple economics. So if you want to know why scores are going down for schools, and I don't know if they are, I'm not saying they are, but if they are going down, it's because the top kids in the schools are going to private schools or other schools to get education because they have the facilities they need to teach these kids. I can tell you personally, as a parent of a middle schooler, I've had these conversations for years with other parents. And it's not one conversation with one set of parents, it's multiple conversations with multiple parents. Because we understand we need to set up our kids for the best future, and if Warwick can't provide the facilities that will set them up for that best future, we're going to find the facilities that will, which means you're taking your top students out and automatically dropping the grade points of how the scores are going. You can't expect teachers to continue to teach at a certain level and then drop the top 10% and have them go where else and say, oh, why did the scores drop? It's because you're not providing the teachers with the facilities and you're not providing the students the ability to stay within the school system in order to learn next generation ways of learning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lindsay Batalon. I am a Warwick taxpayer, a teacher in Warwick, and most importantly, a mother of 3 of children in the Warwick school community. I urge you to continue to push moving forward with these buildings. If all of you look around, you'll notice that these buildings here in Pilgrim, Tollgate, every building in this city are atrocious. Many of you probably went to school here. Looking around, there's an older population here, and I think you probably went here when it was new, and it was new. All right? The children that are here in elementary school and middle school, they deserve to have that same opportunity as well. When I went to school here from 1996 to 2000, it was embarrassing to play here in sports. We had other schools coming in from other cities and towns, and they would laugh. All right? We would hear families all the time talk about how disgusting our gym is, the entrance of the gym, the fields, and they're no better. As a mom who has 3 children who also play sports, they deserve better. We have already had conversations within our household to start planning on sending our children to private schools or move out of Warwick. As a teacher in the district, these students deserve better classrooms. Teachers deserve to work in cleaner and healthier work environments as well. As we know, there is a very high rate of teachers contracting cancer. To circle back to Mr. Cody's ridiculous comment saying the teachers will hold up a middle finger to the school committee, I say we will not do that if you move forward and build new schools. We are the ones in it, many of you are not. You don't know what it's like in these buildings. We need new buildings and we need them now. Thank you to the superintendent and the school committee members who support the building of these new schools. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want, for the record, I believe she had a name change. It's not Batalon. It's okay. Champagne. Congratulations. Yeah. All right. I'm sorry.
Hello, Martin Gom. I have 4 grandchildren in the school system right now, and I'm a commercial industrial electrician, and I'm hoping you guys make sure their people are getting licensed, Rhode Island licensed contractors to design the building blueprints and stuff for here, so we meet regulations and stuff. I'm on a job now. It's disgusting. $1.2 million was in our pocket to take the job. We're already at $80,000 in cost overruns because the plans were designed by peons from beyond that know nothing about Rhode Island law. So I hope take that to note to get it to your guy who's running this for you and take care of that.
Thank you very much.
My name is Barry Cook, 21-year resident of the city of Warwick. I want to start going back to when the presentations were made early on to a comment that Mr. Tester made, and all these years I've been carrying around in my head. He mentioned that the plans that were presented in what I'm going to call a dog and pony show were aspirational and conceptual. Now, I understood that then, I understand it now. So what we were sold were aspirational plans. What we got so far are conceptual plans. There's a difference. Promise one, deliver another. So from my perspective, from the day you started making these presentations, we were oversold, and now you're under-delivering. I want to go back to a point that Mr. Cushman made, and I wish he was still here. Mr. Cushman said, a way to know where your city stands is to understand the net position. Well, without going through all the numbers, I'm a former banker. Let me tell you what net position means to someone like me. It's called an acid test, ACID test. You take your assets and your liabilities. If you have more assets than liabilities, you're in a net position positive. If you have liabilities that exceed your assets, you're what Mr. Cushman described as net problems. $1 billion. We have a net problem where our liabilities way outmeasure the assets. That's a problem. I heard tonight, and I brought my paper with me, but I won't refer to it. But I reread the article in the Beacon going back to September when a $275 million number was floated around, and the 275 was subtracted from the $350 million bond issue, which would lead the normal person to think we have $75 million more than the schools are going to cost to construct. Now, somebody mentioned Johnston. I think the chairman did. Mentioned Johnston and North Providence. Well, Johnston is building a new high school, but they shrunk it because there are not enough students. North Providence was going to build 3 schools, and North Providence eliminated a school. Now, what you folks are doing, you have the pedal to the metal because you're hell-bent on building these 2 schools at any cost. Now, when I say any cost, let me say this. The mayor, Mr. Picozzi, I'd rather call him Mr. Picozzi. Mr. Picozzi said early on that $350 million was the maximum. It would never go back to the voters for more money. And here we are talking about $387.5 million, and I'm going to suggest to you that unless the city council, and I'm glad to see so many council people here, unless the city council has the moral intestinal fortitude to put the brakes on this project, we're going to find ourselves where you folks want a blank check. And I hope Mr. Lattisaw and his compadres will put an end to that kind of discussion. There's no blank checks here.
30 seconds.
That's also a disgrace. 30 seconds. You know what? You're fashioning yourself after our city council. I see you have an armed policeman here. A year ago, August, I challenged the city council the necessity to have an armed policeman here. You could have a security guard here. You don't need a guy with a gun and a badge. What's he going to do, drag us out, arrest us like you did with Cody? You should be ashamed of yourselves. Mr. Galligan, you referred in an email to those of us who don't agree with you as naysayers. You called us naysayers. And you said that you hoped going forward that the naysayers, like me, would agree that the majority rules and go away into the night quietly. Well, I got news for you. The naysayers were right 2 years ago. The naysayers are right tonight. The naysayers will be right 2 years from now. And I can tell you this, I'm not going away. Thank you.
That was probably a good, yeah. I won't take it personally. Jeremy Langell, Ward 5. I have 2 children at Warwick Elementary. Much has been said tonight. I'm just saying that I remain extremely supportive of this project. The high schools have to be redone. There's no debate there. When we voted in 2022, we weren't voting. I'll make an I statement. I don't speak for all taxpayers. I speak for myself. I voted on whether or not we should release $350 million in bonds with a 54% reimbursement from RIDE, 52, 54, to rebuild schools that we have to do. That's it. And we already voted on it. It passed. And it's your job to get it done. And you're doing that. You've got not only a great team organized to help you lead through this process, you've got a wonderful building committee and many staff who are doing this work. And so I think it's very easy to sit on the sidelines and throw grenades. I see this happen, when Reichess scores and these kinds of things get thrown around, and somehow that's supposed to mean that we shouldn't build these buildings and whatnot, right? It's hard not to take it personally, right? Because the kids in the school are my kids, right? And the kids that are in the school that aren't my kids are also my kids, right? And I know all of the things that kids go through to get there. Some of them don't come to school having had breakfast, right? Some of them come to school and there's a variety of social and emotional issues going on. And this district takes them all, right? A public school turns no one away, right? That's why my kids are in public school. That's why I'm an advocate for public school. That's why I will be here at every meeting encouraging you all, stay on the path, get the work done, continue to be transparent what you're doing, continue to be honest, right? And, there's a lot of ways for folks to get involved. We need volunteers for vows, right? We need volunteers to help in PTAs. We need volunteers to help kids with reading and math. So I can think of a lot of ways that some of these folks can translate this social media keyboard warrior energy into something practical. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to interrupt the clapping. I'm Sean Wiggins. I'm a lifelong Warwick resident. First, I want to thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you. Good man. Obviously, as everybody said, this has been an interesting night. Interesting comments made. I will state immediately, I am 150% for this project, 150% for these kids. I have a junior at Pilgrim who goes to this building, and I'm not sure if you noticed, everyone in this room. How does it feel? Right? Imagine if this was full. How would you feel? If this was full, though they come here, and they come in this building, and they sit, all of them, in these seats. How are you feeling right now? I already had Mr. Spiegel take off his jacket. I'm sweating my bum off. So, we know we've come a long way since August. I think we all know that, right? In August, we were talking about parking lots. We were talking about gym sizes. We're talking about bows and arrows. There's a lot of stuff that we were talking about. Now, obviously, we're going further down the line. But we have to, right? We have to do. Am I wrong? I understand that people don't want to pay taxes. I don't want to pay taxes. I got 3 kids. I got a kid at URI. I paid for 4 cars. My insurance just went up. It sucks. I get it. But to sit and pontificate and yell at everybody for being people is just not appropriate. We are a community. We need to act like a community. We need to know what's right. And when we're talking about things that aren't right for children, I think our priorities are a little messed up. I think we need to really focus on what's important. We have a superintendent who gives a crap. We have a committee who cares. We have to do best by these kids. We are renovating all of our elementary schools. Why? Why are we renovating all our elementary schools? Because they need it, right? They're smaller buildings. That's a smaller population. These are the largest populations in the city of Warwick, and we're saying, nah. I got an 8-year-old, Mr. Galligan, as well, as you know. I'd like to see him in a new school. I like him not to sweat his stuff off here at Pilgrim High School or at Tollgate, where everything's falling apart. And
30 seconds.
I just want us to be human and realize that these schools need to be built. I appreciate the transparency. I appreciate these meetings. I appreciate these updates. And I know that you all will be held accountable. You all have been by having these meetings. And I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you.
My name is Joanna Conley. I'm a resident and I'm a parent of two beautiful little boys. I didn't grow up in the state of Rhode Island. My husband did. Sorry, I'm nervous. He went through the Warwick public system. I get emotional about this. When I moved here with my husband and we bought our first home together, everybody said, "Are you sure you want to stay in Warwick? Are you sure you want to have your kids go to Pilgrim?" And I said, "I want my kids to graduate from the same high school that my husband did. And I want them to be proud of it." And I didn't want to have to think about where I was going to send them. And when I heard that there were going to be new high schools, I could have done a cartwheel that I can't physically do. And I said, "Oh my gosh, they're going to do it. They're going to build it. It's going to happen for my kids." And I went to the city council meeting that I had never been to before, and the bond was passed. And I cried, just like I am tonight. And then when I heard that it might not actually go through, I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to have to put my kids in private school now? My husband graduated here in 2003, and he said, oh gosh, the facilities are not up to date then. So what are they like 20 plus years later? And now I'm scared to, what will my kids face in 5 or 6 years? He's on Warwick North, will he get the field and get to play the sports that he loves? Will he get the academic education that he needs? And now I have to consider, do I send him to a private school? Do I take that money, all this money, I thought I don't have a daycare payment anymore. Will I have a daycare payment again? Will I have to send him to private? And what about the parents that don't have the luxury to think? We can't even think about private. And take that money that I want to send them to college with, will I have to send it to high school with now? I don't want to have to think about that. So I ask you to please move forward with this. If we start all over again, like I heard, and we kick this can down the road, it's going to be more and more money. I'm realistic that when I do a project at my house, it's always going to be a little bit higher. I'm always realistic. The budget is never what the budget really is. And I really knew, as a taxpayer, this was going to be a little bit higher. It's going to be more. It's going to be higher and higher if we wait any longer. I'm thinking about all my friends' kids, my kids, and all the future kids and people's grandkids that are here. I love this town. I'm calling this home for that. I didn't even grow up in this state. I've never felt more at home. I feel like I'm at home with my family, and I don't even have my immediate family here. So I'm asking you to move forward with this. Please. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hi, Michelle Landry. I am going on my 25th year as a teacher in Warwick Public Schools. First, I'd like to start by thanking Ms. Danbrook for her commitment and support to this project. We really appreciate it as teachers. Secondly, I'd like to say to the gentleman who was up here a little bit earlier, wouldn't 2 brand new state-of-the-art facilities add to our assets and increase our net positive rate, whatever that is? I don't know. I think 2 new schools would only add to our asset side. The other thing I want to say is, I am the chairperson of the department, the science department. On the next generation science assessment in 2024, Tollgate High School scored a 55 scale point, which was 3 scale points above the state average. Thank you very much. And that's with no gas, no sinks. We're working bare bones, bare cupboards, and we're doing it at Tollgate. Imagine what we could do with a state-of-the-art facility. Thank you very much. 3,500 elementary kids in K-5. We only have about 2,400 total in high school. Where does that other 30% of the kids go? They go to charter schools. They go to private schools. Their families move away. They go other places because other places have better school buildings than we do. We can keep people in the city by building 2 new schools. I urge you to stay the course, keep moving forward. it was inevitable that the cost was going to go up just based on the economy, the way the economy is. It was an inevitability. And I think it's time to just move forward, full steam ahead, and get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 second. 1 second, miss. All right. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Hi, Darlene Netco, lifelong resident of Warwick, homeowner, taxpayer, voter. 37 years now in the classroom teaching English, and I'm president of the Warwick Teachers Union. There are a number of answers I want to give to some questions that came up earlier about reimbursement. Thanks to our state legislature, now Warwick is going to be reimbursed as the project goes along. So we don't have to wait until all the schools are, both schools are completely built to get reimbursed. And speaking of reimbursement, keep in mind that our Warwick tax dollars are going to the state of Rhode Island. And the state of Rhode Island is going to be dispersing those tax dollars to all of the other cities and towns that are building new schools. So Warwick is, you know, to listen to some people talk, Warwick, some people want to scuttle this project entirely. And so let no Warwick tax dollars come back to Warwick. As far as the new schools themselves, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Michelle mentioned the facilities in the science department. At least the science classrooms have windows. I'm in a classroom without windows. I'm in a classroom where there's something that used to be a ventilation system that doesn't run. You think this room is hot? Try my windowless classroom on a daily basis. I dress like this and in layers because some parts of the building are freezing and my classroom's 100 degrees. Earlier, the superintendent mentioned that we had a generational opportunity here. And she's not lying. The last time we had an opportunity like this, the 60s and 70s. Pilgrim was built in the 60s, I forget the exact year, and the Tollgate complex was built in the early 70s. That complex is now our youngest facility, and it's 50 years old. And it's falling apart. Last year, Tollgate had 3 elemental disasters. We had a wind issue that blew the roof off the A building. I have videotape of it undulating. We had a radiator explode over February vacation and spewed hot water and steam for 12 hours until it was discovered the next morning. So I think it was something like 32,000 square feet of flooring had to be replaced. And while a single source was there dealing with that, there was a fire and smoke pouring out of the library. This building, Pilgrim, can't have any more electrical upgrades made to it. These buildings need to be replaced. And it's not a joke. Michelle mentioned a number of the places that students are going. They're also going to other public schools through Pathways. And I wish I had a whole hour here to talk about Pathways, because North Kingston and Pontigansett got in on the ground floor. They were grandfathered in with inferior programs.
Time, Ms. Necco.
And Warwick has the exact same coursework, but because they were grandfathered in, ours didn't get approved, but theirs did.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Members of the school committee, Madam Superintendent, Don Fife, Ward 1. I've been a Warwick resident all my life, all 83 years. I went to Warwick Veterans High School. It was the only high school in Warwick at the time. I graduated in '61. We had 20,000 students in Warwick at that time. I had double sessions. My homeroom was in the auditorium. My school hours were 7 in the morning to noon time. I loved it because I had the noon time to do my homework. So then and Warwick Vets was built in 1956. So I went there the 3rd year, almost brand new. And then they built Tollgate and Pilgrim. and property taxes went up, and people left. The same thing is going to happen now. Mayor Picozzi, he made a statement, and it was in the Warwick Beacon, November of 2022. He said people will be forced out of their homes because they won't be able to pay the property taxes. I'm having a tough time now paying property taxes, and they're going to go way up. And nobody can tell us the 5-year what the property taxes are going to be in the next 5 years. It's going to be out of sight. A lot of people are going to go. And at age 83, I don't feel like moving. When Steve Marola was president, council president, and he was doing the budget hearing, he asked the fiduciary, what is the point of no return? And at that time, he said 5 years. 5 years, which is now about 9 years of point no return. And Judge Flanagan said that Rhode Island is qualified for receivership. And that was about 8-9 years ago. Warwick now is in debt by $1 billion. With a B, $1 billion.
30 seconds.
And building these two new schools is going to bankrupt. And we pay property taxes to maintain these schools. Why can't these schools last more than 50 years? You got Yale and Harvard. They're over 100 years old, and we can't have a school last 50 years. What happened to the money that maintains these schools? And this is going to be torn down. This is beautiful auditorium. And, if they can't maintain a bridge, how are they going to maintain the schools?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service, too.
Thank you.
Good evening. Zach Colon, Warwick resident, taxpayer. I went to school here in Warwick Public Schools from K to 12. In 13 years, I saw that Warwick needs new schools. They are falling apart, and we've seen the renovation costs are nearly as much as building new schools. Building new schools is what we need to do. However, we cannot build schools that aren't meeting the needs of our students. There are a number of points brought forward in August of things the public felt needed to improve in the illustrations we saw. Sports facilities were the most common theme, I think we would all agree we heard. To hear that if we were to do these projects at the original cost of $350 million, that sports facilities, arts, or chorus room disappearing would be the first to go is something that we must avoid. We cannot remodel our schools. With remodeling, what are our kids going to do in these schools? Do they do double sessions? How will they learn with machinery and demolition in the classroom next door? It cannot work. There is no world where doing a sloppy job of building new schools are worth the dollars we're going to spend. So we need to do that right. I'm a taxpayer in this amazing city that I grew up in. My wife and I bought our own home here in this city this year. We have our first baby, a little girl on the way. My wife is 15 weeks today. Just found out last week that it's a little girl. Very excited. I'm ecstatic, okay? I'm very, very excited to have my first baby. But I'm even more excited for her to go to a different Tollgate High School than I did. This is an opportunity our city needs to take advantage of. We need to do it right. I also want to go on record that I support building schools, in case you haven't gotten the gist of that by now. But we need to do it right. We cannot build subpar schools. I want my tax dollars invested in our city in the most valuable way possible. That's new schools that meet the needs of our students and teachers. I think our kids, families, teachers, admin deserve it. They're worth it. We need to invest to make these the best schools that they can be in the city of Warwick, to make our property values go up, and to benefit the future going forward.
30
Thank
seconds.
you very much for being transparent, bringing this forward, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sean Rainey, Ward 1, Pilgrim Alumni 91. I know you're going to laugh when you hear this, but in 2008, most of the people that came here tonight that lived in Warwick passed a bond from Mickey Stevens Sports Complex. $8 million. $8 million. Our fearless leader at that time decided not to float the bond, and that $8 million is probably, who knows what it is right at these days. So we cannot kick this down the road, because this $387 million, we kick it down a year, it's probably going to be over 400, 450, whatever it may be. We cannot, we have to go forward. We have to stay with what we need. As a baseball coach at Vets, 6th, 7th, 8th grade kids, 8th grade kids, I always ask, I said this at the last meeting, I always ask, why are you going to Henrikin, or why are you going to another school system? They're like, oh, they have better facilities, better baseball fields, better soccer fields, better gymnasiums, they have better everything. We can't let these kids keep going to other systems because they have better stuff than us. We are, as the kids leave the system, the money goes with them. We need to keep these kids here. I know we're talking about schools, but the second part of schools is athletes. Kids these days want to go to college. If they can't afford college, they want to be student athletes, and they want to get scholarships. They want to do things like that. We need to make sure our kids have the best facilities. And I will say, we need artificial turf, we need lights, we need everything that we can do. My taxes go up, I'll pay my taxes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Flanders, lived in Warwick over 50 years. I'm a phys ed department head here at Pilgrim High School, head soccer coach here at Pilgrim High School. And I stated at the last meeting, it was at Vets, and the podium was over there, and I said, if you build a product, if you build it right, everything's going to take care of itself. Because everything that we hear from our students that leave here are they're going for better facilities, better opportunities, taking long rides to schools that are far away, just so they don't have to come into a facility like this. We had our senior night last night. Our soccer team had our senior night last night, which we did very well. We beat the first place team in the division last night. And but there's always something that ruins the moment. And so as you look around, you know, when you go to other schools and they have a press box that they announce from, and we have portable speakers. And then they have an area where the folks go and use the facilities in a concession stand. We have Porta Johns and Jersey Mike sandwiches that are sitting on a folding table. And then you get to the field, and we have a field that's primarily made of dirt that our poor groundskeeper can't keep paint on, because it's very difficult to keep paint on dirt rather than grass. And then you get to the comments from the other parents from the other schools. My parents actually came down and told me we had to move out of the area because the comments were so negative. We had to move out because it was so embarrassing what was being said. So we have this opportunity, and I emphasize that opportunity. Anything else is cruelty. I'm telling you right now, the kids that come and play here have guts, because the ridicule and all the other things that go along with being a student at Pilgrim and in the athletic field and being a student at Tollgate, you have to put up with a lot. To coach in this environment, and I'm not tooting my own horn, there's a bunch of coaches that I applaud that coach here and coach at Tollgate that deal with nonsense, poor facilities, poor conditions, but we do it because we love the kids. And that's what you should do, Warwick. Listen to the kids, listen to all the other cities and towns that come in here and say this place is a dump. Move forward. Your enemy is time. Delays are time. And if we wait much longer, the phys ed classes and the athletic stuff, I mean, it's a good thing that we're getting another rink. We'll have the most rinks per capita since Minnesota.
Work with me. Take a breath.
Patrick Maloney, former school committee vice chair and current candidate for mayor. I'm surprised this came up before the election, and I thank Chairman Galligan for alerting us. The mayor and other city council members asked to push it until after the election, and I applaud you for this. First, let's get this out of the way. Chickens, no. Panhandlers, protected. Favorite book, who cares? Finances, finances, finances. 12,000 students down to 8,005 in 12 years. If you build it, they will come. A fantasy. Tell me how many new students are in East Providence. You can't. I looked for the data. You might have the data, but it's not online. So that's one more thing you have that we don't. $3 million guaranteed for Providence Walking Bridge. Final cost, $21 million. Now, before I go further, I'm not just here to point fingers, but I will do that. I'll start with the solution, because you can't come up here and complain without a solution. And here's our solution. All day, every day, for the next 12 days, call and tell your representatives you will not vote to reelect them. If they get 10 calls, they know there's an issue. If they receive 1,000 calls, they know there's a real problem. 12 days. And then, don't vote for them anyway. It means they did not listen for the last 2 years. These representatives appoint members to the Rhode Island Department of Education. RIDE members will be replaced. We will get the one school that we need, 12,000 down to 8,005, with appropriate prices and all the bells and whistles the voters were promised in the bond. Over 1,000 cereal-loving fanatics and health activists swarmed Michigan headquarters at Kellogg's Tuesday, demanding the end of harmful dyes in cereal, delivering 400,000 signatures. Vote every politician out and things will change. Rhode Island politicians will get the message. Education should be respected. They will find a way to reimburse 90% of the building, just like Providence, that's only 6.5 miles away. Now for the finger pointing. Ms. Backus, you now say we can't wait because it will cost too much. You held up the closure of other schools, costing the city money that could have been used for this project. We could have been working on this several years ago. You created contrast.
30
I don't trust.
seconds.
How long?
30.
Thank you. I warned the people of Warwick during the Warwick Beacon debate last week. The same company hired to build schools in North Providence was OPM left field. North Providence was forced to go back to the city, and they changed the plan from 3 schools to 2 schools. This was not the bond approved by the people of North Providence. Were your eyes closed to what was happening just a year ago? We cannot afford $350 million. We cannot afford $37.5 million additional costs. $3 million guaranteed for the Providence Walking Bridge.
If you could wrap up the last comment.
$21 million. The mayor said he will not go back out to a vote for more money. It doesn't matter what you guys decide. The mayor will not do it. We need the information. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for your service.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Mr. Chair, members of the school committee, elected officials who are here this evening, and members of the public who gave their time to come out and comment For the record, my name is Michael Zarum. I'm a resident in Ward 2. Single-family residence has been in my family at this point for more than 60 years. And Mr. Galligan, I have some issues with the way you spoke to the public tonight. I did not like you speaking down to Mr. Cody. It was Mr. Cody, it was myself, it was Bob Cushman, it was Council Lattiser that originally said the escalation rates that were used when all this started were too low. One of my jobs in aerospace defense was to manage price escalation cost recovery for a company with over 60,000 employees. I don't see that being done here. And I want to make some suggestions because I want this to be positive. I don't know of anybody in the city of Warwick that would be against building better schools. I want to add too that I'm an alum of Pilgrim High School, class of 72, which was 52 years ago. And I'm glad to see the auditorium in the shape it is tonight, and it's still being used. And I think of ripping all this stuff here. Now I want to mention one of the problems that I've seen long-term with the city, a lack of maintenance in all city buildings, including the schools. I'm not going to go through all the ones that have been closed for lack of maintenance. I want to focus on other things. But one of them is, I don't know of anybody that's against newer and better schools. I look at Hope High School. It was built in 1938. I look at classrooms I've sat in at Harvard. Much, much older, still in good shape, still usable. The architecture building at MIT is in worse shape than any of the schools in Warwick. But some of the things I'd like to see, some of the questions I'd like answered are, it's not, the question tonight is not really what you asked earlier, tell us whether you're for or against it. That's not the question. The question is, there's a shortfall on funding, we can't afford it. The mayor said up front, before the bond went to the bond referendum to be voted on, we were all told, we all asked the question, if there's a shortfall in funding, what's going to happen? And we were told the project would be canceled. And now here we are talking about a 40 or possibly higher shortfall. Who's going to finance the tax burden on that? You've got people like me who are now retired on a fixed income. I don't have any kids in school, nor will I have any in the future. I calculated for the home I live in what my family has paid over the years.
30 seconds.
It was enough to put me and my sister through, whoop, my phone's ringing too, through private high schools 5 times, both me and my sister. This is totally not equitable for the seniors, and you need to talk about that. I also have other questions, and I'd also ask you to, one more thing, let me just finish this, to put up a Q&A page on the website where residents and constituents can write in with their questions, and the answers can get posted on that website. We did that on a major subway project. We got a national award for community relations because we answered the questions and were upfront online. Please do that.
Thank you.
I will submit more comments at a later date.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Spiegel, can we get something spun up like that for the public? I appreciate solutions, sir. Thank you. That's what we need from the community.
Yeah. If I could just make one more comment too on the finance.
I'm sorry, sir. We got to stick black and white on the rules. I'm sorry. I could come see you after the meeting if you'd like. No problem.
Long night. Thank you all for being here. Officer, thank you for being here. James Italiani, Ward 6. My wife is running for City Council. She's attended most of these meetings, if not in person here. She's an accountant by trade for 40 years, and she saw from the very beginning, when we started to pay attention, that what was being said wasn't possible. You've heard how many people tonight that have told you time and time again for half a decade that what you folks are saying is not possible. Still, I hear, whether it be our dear superintendent, who wants state-of-the-art schools, she said that again tonight, that's not what we're gonna get. We've been hoodwinked, okay? We voted on some bonds for for something that has no relevance to what we are now being told maybe we will get. And we all want the best of schools. And I don't mind $20,000 a year in property tax. But I gotta tell you, my friends, some of my neighbors simply won't be able to afford that. And if you think I'm kidding about that, that's only 4 times what I'm presently paying. If we end up getting state-of-the-art schools and spend, I don't know, the better part of $1 billion, that's where our property tax will be. And the saddest part of this is we look at our test scores, which are terrible for Warwick. Don't compare them to private schools. Compare them to the other public schools. Compare them to other states. And sadly, Warwick is nowhere near, even in this state. So we're not even the best of the worst. New schools is not going to correct that problem. So we've got a lot more work to do, my friends. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. I'm Bill Paola. I'm running for City Council on Ward 2. I'm not going to repeat anything anyone else had a comment on tonight, but what I am going to put the issue on city leaders, school committee, City Council, the mayor. You're looking for a solution. The thing you guys need to do is all of you need collectively get together. 87% of the town's budget, your budget, is payroll and benefits. Sit down with the unions, figure out where you can get the money, what you can do, and the schools won't be an issue to pay for. Shared sacrifice. It's that simple. And I think you would get the support of the community and the unions if it all went that way. And nobody has to bite the bullet. I looked at a house today. It was $850 grand. The taxes was $12,000. I started laughing. I said, man, if nothing gets done with this, I ain't gonna be able to live there. So naturally, I'm not gonna buy the house. I'll just stay where I am. But that's my point. I think that's what really needs to be done. That's the plan. Bring everyone together. You're the leaders. You're in charge. You need to do it. That's all.
Thank you.
Hello, Armand Lucy, LUSI, Ward 9. I'm happy to serve as a member of the Warwick School Building Committee, and for the last 2 years, our chairman, who does a fine job, Mr. Testa, is saying $350 million, not a penny more. $350 million, not a penny more. Every meeting we've had for the last 2 years, that's what's said. You simply don't have the money. I don't know how you regroup, but right now I think should be pencils down. No more payments to the architect's consultants, to the project manager. But I would say that you should work with Dimeo in his pre-construction contract to see how you can build this for $350 million. Because if you're gonna go out for a separate referendum, you're talking May or June, because it needs to go through the council. There's a couple of months. It needs to go to the General Assembly. Then it needs to be put to the voters. And then you're gonna have a referendum in June, or maybe 4th of July like Cranston did, and 4% of the voters come out and it passes because everyone's at the beach or everyone's doing something. I want everyone to know on record that I will personally fund a fierce opposition to any referendum to exceed $350 million, okay? The other issue at the school is the project labor agreement. Our architect says that's going to cost 5 to 10% more. I think he's high on that, but I think it's another $5 to $10 million by utilizing a PLA. At the next the school building committee meeting on November 6th, I'm going to propose a separate type of project labor agreement that's a little bit different. And other than that, everyone wants new schools. There's no question. I want them too. I live here, I work here, I have investment property here. I'm not in the construction business anymore. I'm willing to do my part, but you need to figure this out. You know, the other thing is, I mean, if it's going to cost $900 a square foot, as Mr. Cody said, maybe it will. Well, then divide that into the $140 million. You're building a 150,000 square foot school. Is that enough? Can you save portions of the existing schools like the auditorium? Maybe you can. That's something that we need to look at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, board. Good morning, everybody that's sat through this meeting. Michael Holmes, Ward 6. I wasn't planning on speaking at first, but I think it goes without saying we have to. I've been hearing for years we couldn't afford the first $40 million bond. We couldn't afford the $60 million bond. We couldn't afford the $350 million bond. What's the other choice? Ignore the schools? Watch everybody move out? Have the teachers with lousy morale? I have 2 kids in the current Warwick school system, one at Oakland Beach Elementary School, one at Warwick Vets. They have had the best teachers I could ever dream of my kids having. But they still have to put up with facilities that were built in the 50s and the 60s, one that got an auditorium well after the fact. The necessity for school construction and the act by the legislature gave us, you, the board, the ability to get 2 schools for the price of 1. Take the foot off the pedal now, we'll never do it. And then we'll build 1 school for 2.5 times the price that's currently on the table. I'd never give up a 2-for-1 opportunity. 2 brand new, almost 300,000 square foot facilities in the aggregate with great teachers for a great education. Then we can bring in more jobs. People can work for the construction companies, the credible company that's on record right now. They could go to work for the OPM, studying architecture, studying engineering. They could grow, they can educate themselves, they can graduate, and then their future is so much more possible. Don't deprive them of that future. I'm very much in favor of these schools, and for every single accusation I've heard about hoodwink, this, that, and the other thing, show up at the 7:30 a.m. meetings of the Warwick School Building Committee. Show up to the school committee meetings held twice a month. Show up to the city council meeting. It's not a secret. It never has been. There's a transparent process with open public meeting rules that have to be followed. There are no secrets. I appreciate construction is a complicated thing. It changes. Every time you move a doorway, you're going to change the engineering of a wall. That's why it takes as much time as it does. That's when you discover we need to change the way we approach a construction project. And I commend everybody that's taken part of the process up until now, because I know it hasn't been easy and you often get the finger pointed at you. Thank you for sticking it out. Thank you for hearing everything, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Warwick School Committee. My name is Anthony Chair, and I'll be brief. I'm the Assistant Executive Director with Build RI, with the Labor Management Coalition that advocates for said PLAs. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I wanted to combat the misinformation that was previously referenced, mainly around the PLA. Rhode Island has a heightened standard to implement a PLA process. One, the Public Awarding Authority has to undergo an independent economic feasibility study. Once that feasibility study is concluded, it is recommended or not to undergo a PLA. Warwick School Committee has done that, and the feasibility study has come back as a recommendation to do a PLA. Why would you do a PLA? First off, the PLA guarantees the immediate access of skilled labor from the 17 building trades that represent the Rhode Island Building Trades Council. Warwick would be an outlier if they did not implement a PLA on this. Schools from Providence, Pawtucket, Cranston, North Providence, Johnson, where they just have a topping off ceremony yesterday, operating under a PLA, which the mayor said that they were completing the project ahead of schedule, which I think is an important note. PLA guarantees that there's no work stoppage, that there's no work delays, and dealing with a tight budget as Warwick is, time is money, and if there's delay, there's estimate about $50,000 per month in cost overruns if delays happen. A PLA at its core supersedes existing CBAs, and the 17 building trades locals have their own individual CBAs. The PLA supersedes that, so the contractor assigns the work given to the trade, and if there's an arbitration needed, the work does not stop. So thus, we're hitting that time frame of August 2027. and that is an important date. I'm happy to answer any questions along this time, and I will make one note that Armin Lucy constructed the Boss Arena back in 2000 under a PLA, and if it's good for Armin Lucy and URI, who's conducted multiple PLAs and has a study tomorrow, why not for Warwick? So I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public looking to comment? Any other members of the public looking to comment? Any other members of the public looking to comment? See none, I'm going to close public comment. I want to thank Left Field, Dimeo, members of the administration, everybody that came out tonight and gave us public comment. We've got a lot of great notes. I appreciate those that gave us some solutions and suggestions, positive feedback on what we should do to move forward here. So thank you all very much. With that being stated, future meetings, Health and Wellness Subcommittee meeting, Tuesday, October 29th, 3 p.m. Policy Subcommittee meeting, Tuesday, October 29th, 4:30 p.m. Warwick School Building Committee meeting, Wednesday, November 6th, 7:30 a.m. Next Fiscal Subcommittee meeting, Wednesday, November 6th, 3 p.m. And the next regularly scheduled monthly school committee meeting, Tuesday, November 12th at 7 p.m. With there being no other business before this body, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa, Ms. Backus. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we're adjourned.